for now, Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12, joining me here because a report from Pete Thamel that the president of the University of Baylor extended invitations out.
Baylor.
Yes, Baylor University. That one. That's the one. Sick 'em. But the president of Baylor, who's the chairwoman, I should say, of the Big 12 board of directors, said, "Hey, we should have a chat. We should all get together and talk." Yes, that's the university right there on Drake's hat. We should get together and talk about this idea of someone forming a super league, or there's so many changes, or look at the playoff, and now we've got just all these things going on and whatnot. And the expectation is the Big Ten and SEC are not even going to show up. They're not even going to show up at the table, Drake. That makes me think that they're talking about something on their own time and excluding everybody else.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and correct you here because I don't think that it's hey, we should meet. It is, everybody together, hurry, quickly, let's meet. Because the actual verbiage here that Thamel uses is urgent need for the presidents and chancellors from the Power Four conferences to gather in person by the first week of December to talk about something. If I am the Big 12 here, or Linda Livingstone, who's organizing this on behalf of the Big 12, I'm probably not doing it because I feel like I'm in a spot of leverage or in a solid position, especially when Thamel goes on to say, sources told ESPN, there is no expectation that any Big Ten or SEC presidents will attend. This is the Big 12 saying, hey, remember those super conference things that were a conversation a while ago that kind of died down? What if those are still happening behind the scenes? Let's do an emergency meeting. And the two conferences that would be at the forefront of those talks said, nah, we're good. That's not very positive if you're the Big 12 or ACC.
I completely agree, and it gives off the vibe of, hey, can you confirm that this has happened? We can neither confirm nor deny that this has happened. Like, hey, we need to talk about the super conferences. Well, we don't need to talk about them. Well, why don't you need to talk about them? Is it because you're not going to do it? We don't need to talk about them. I think what they really would mean in that hypothetical conversation is we don't need to talk about them with you, because the idea of a super conference, I've seen this get thrown around before. This is not a new idea per se, that the Big Ten and SEC would just take their biggest brands because, 14 teams are responsible for 60% of college football viewership or some ungodly percentage like that. But an actual breakaway here, anytime I see this pop up, Drake, my ears tune up and go, no, please don't do that. But what's anyone going to do?
Yeah, there are two schools of thought here when it comes to the idea of a super conference building a 20-team or 32-team or 40-team league that holds the best of the best when it comes to viewership. And on one front, you're killing the legendary Boise State beats Oklahoma, or App State beats Michigan, or the wild, crazy deal in 2007 where a Hawaii or a UCF, or a USF, I should say, get to be in the top five. But then you look at the product the NFL gives you. They have 32 teams. So if your case is, and my case has often been, the Ohio State and Michigan, at some point we get tired of watching them play, or at some point we'll get tired of Georgia playing Penn State. We'll get tired of the big dogs. Will we? We don't, week in and week out, when the top dogs play out of a 32-team league in the NFL, and we don't in the MLB, we don't in the NBA, and those are pro leagues. But guess what? That's where college football is inching closer and closer to, as schools are paying players as employees very soon. And so if we talk about oversaturation of football, I think that case is starting to go away too, when the SEC and Big Ten say, if the pros can do it, we could probably do it at a fairly successful rate as well. They're at least looking into it, and they don't want the Big 12 to be in those conversations.
I think there are changes you could make to college football if you had one centralized governing body that would make it a better television product with more high quality matchups. I think that can happen. This is not the way to get there. This is the completely wrong approach, because college football has always been different from the NFL in a lot of ways.
Can I ask you, though, is this approach going to make the SEC or the Big Ten more money? I mean, we say it's the wrong approach for a college football fan standpoint, but will it make them more money? Because that's the actual goal.
It probably would, because they wouldn't have to disperse the money that they mostly bring in to a lot of bottom feeder schools. But allow me to present the case as to why this is just would be such a horrible development if it were to ever gain traction in the college football world out there. if you had literally, Drake, 3 months ago, what are we in the 11th month of the year? Let me do some quick math. Okay. If you had 3 months ago discussed this idea, and heck, you go back, find some episodes, I'm sure you and I did at some point in time, and you'd said, well, here's who you'd put in a super league. You'd want to have this many teams. You'd want to have these teams. Would Indiana have been included? Legitimate question. Legitimate question. And this is the objection that I would have to, well, yeah, I like having more big games. That's one of the positive effects of realignment on the one hand. You didn't have to make all of these sweeping changes across the sport in order to get there. But any job can be one coach away from suddenly elevating itself. True. And I think Indiana is showcasing that. They're not the only ones, but they're just the most recent example of, hey, you hire the right guy, you can go toe-to-toe with the big boys. Indiana's playing Michigan this week. I think they're going to beat them by more than 14.
Yeah, how many postseason games has Indiana won under Curt Cignetti? I think the case you'd start to make is that when we get to the actual college football playoff or national championship, when is the last time an underdog won the whole thing? The only underdog we've seen have success is TCU, and they lost 65-7. So to play, honestly, devil's advocate for a conference like the Big 12 that's being left out of these conversations, it's Alabama, it's Clemson, it's by and large a Notre Dame or a Penn State who can't even get to the pinnacle, but they're still going to be included because they have that brand. That is what these conferences are looking for. They don't care about Indiana. They would leave them out. Or BYU. They would get left out. But then they make the case at the end of the year, we would still have the right national championship. And the data backs that up. That's what sucks about this, is because if Greg Sankey sits down and says, hey, if we make a super league of 25 teams, Indiana's not included, but they wouldn't have won the national championship anyway. And he's right. It's a money-first decision that, I mean, you put it right here in the middle of the show title. Another reason to distrust the Big Ten and the SEC. That's why you distrust them, because they're going to move forward with whatever decision makes the most money.
And the amazing thing that they could ponder something like this is these media deals that you and I have talked about for the last 18 months or so, they're just now starting. Mm-hmm. They're brand new. I mean, Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson are calling Oregon, Illinois, and Oregon, Michigan. That wasn't feasible 2 years ago. It's not how it works. So, like, these contracts are brand new. They're worth obscene amounts of money. They're, $1 billion each for the Big Ten and the SEC, 70 to 90 million. Like, there's plenty of money out there, and I just wonder why. Like, just why? What more are you looking for? Why are you trying to tear at the fabric of something that you have used to elevate your brand and put yourself in a position to compete for a national championship everyone cares about? Because if you go out and make a super league, you're going to have a lot of people that are turned off and say, whatever. Yep. That's just not, that would suck. That would suck. I hope this gains negative traction. Right.
If your question is why, the answer is always going to be money. And there is money made in a product that is refined. That's the case that Greg Sankey is going to make, and it's likely, based on how President Livingstone of Baylor University is acting, how Sankey and others have talked behind closed doors.
Really quick, do you think this has anything to do with the potential of the Big 12 champion not getting a first round bye in the college football playoff? Because as I've laid out here on the show before, it's entirely possible. Boise State's ranked 12th. Yep. What if Boise State wins their next 5 football games or whatever it would be, including the conference title game, and BYU doesn't win the Big 12? I think Boise State would get a bye in the Big 12. What do you think that is at all part of the conversation?
You can make a case for Boise State or Army, and I would say no. I don't believe that's part of the conversation. What I do believe is an aspect of this actually does go back to how the election fizzled on Tuesday. What happened with most of it, I've read a lot of editorials about, with most of the country going red, we started to talk about, okay, from a legislative standpoint, which is huge now in college athletics, where does that take us? That's at play here, I guarantee it.
Yeah, it is. Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. Thanks, Drake.
Yeah.
That's a great way.
Thanks to me, not to Greg Sankey or Tony Petitti.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way to put it.